Let me quote Matt Katz. When we had our town hall meeting, and I posed the question like, so is there any tenant here anybody wants to fight for? Is there any tenant people would really don't want to see go away? And Matthew stood up and he said, if it's true that you are what you eat, I am Trellis Coffee.
I didn't want to belabor the library question, but it sounds like the window problem is sorting itself out. And what I was wondering is whether you could negotiate with NYPL to offer the community, if not schematics, then at least artist renderings, so people will have a feeling of inclusion in the planning for the new library.
It's a great idea. I mean, the library is here but for the grace of Jessica Lapin. So it's public support that's going to allow them to build the space. And so you might want to talk to Councilman Kalos or Gail Brewer's office or RIAC about how to get involved in. I mean, I can tell you who we talked to. We've already signed the lease with them, so we can't say, oh, we wanted you to sign an amendment saying you have to have these men catch. But I can't imagine why they wouldn't do that anyway. And
it just might not occur to them, but I learned about the 2017 date from a quote from Tony Moss, and if you're in discussion with him, perhaps he would be the honcho to make that happen.
So if you want to think about like what's the right Bureau subcommittee or who would be the right people to talk to the library, I'd be happy to make the connection.
I defer to the Vice President.
Hi, David Vicky. So speaking of windows, and I do think that Main Street looks 1,000 times better, but I do still think that there's too many flyers and advertisements and crappy stuff on the store windows, number one. And I think part of that is because there really isn't a community, there isn't a place for people other than the kiosks where nothing sticks to for community events and community stuff that's going on. So the store owners are nice enough to put community stuff on them, but they look awful.
Right, and yet in our new signage guidelines, we are very strict about no scotch tape, no clutter. We have limitations on the square footage of storefront space that can be used. We have primary, secondary, and tertiary sign requirements. And we had this idea of having a digital signage vision, and it was just we're still a little bit ahead of our time in terms of having an outdoor vulnerable to the elements space. But what I wanted to do was get rid of the concrete structures with the scotch tape and the thing, and have my vision. And actually, I think it's a good RIAC project more than a Hudson Related thing. It really has to do with the island, but figure out some way so that everybody has their 8.5 by 11 piece of paper announcing the Toastmasters or the theater club, and it is it can be in some form where it's a touch screen or where it comes up and
some alternative we need. And one more thing, the stationery store. And and I want everyone to do well. What really bothers me is when you walk in, particularly in the summer, there's absolutely no air conditioning. They haven't had air conditioning for years and years and years. They have a huge fan in there as soon as you walk in, which I happen to think is very dangerous for children. And it's just, we shouldn't have to accept that. I mean, it's disgusting.
Yeah, you're right. And the way the market typically works is that if the store doesn't treat its customers respectfully, then they have fewer customers and they go out of business. In this particular case, without knowing the specifics, and in defense of the Island News, we've been negotiating a new lease with them, and we've been talking about sort of changing their space. And so it could be, without knowing the details, that they didn't want to reinvest in their existing space, in their existing equipment if it was going to change. And we've looked at a few different scenarios with them. So that would be the case. But you know, what I suggest that anybody does is go up to the manager and say, you know,
I do.
it's too hot here,
I do.
you're going to lose your business.
I do.
And you know, if they deserve to stay in business, they'll be responsive.
A couple of things. First of all, we're looking for
Louder,
tenants, smaller tenants, maybe who can use some of the smaller space for a variable size space. Unleashed, Petco's, smaller.
Yeah, right. Yes. So we've had that's I should have added that to the list of the Mexican restaurant, hardware store, and the bakery. So we've had our eye on the pet store since the beginning, and there's no pet store on the island, and the Riverwalk folks have dogs, and everybody's got cats, and it seems an obvious. We have gotten right to the brink with 2 tenant groups to open up a pet store, and neither of them worked out.
But Unleashed was a Petco company, and it's a smaller sliver. It's like a pocket.
Oh, okay.
There's a Petco on 67th and 3rd Avenue.
They haven't. We've reached out to them. They haven't been interested today.
There's an American Kennel one, right?
So here's what you do. Next time you're at Unleashed, you say to whoever, you know, is willing to listen, like, oh, you guys would do great on Roosevelt Island. You make a lot of money on Roosevelt Island. You can be our ambassadors. Because we pitch the island as aggressively and enthusiastically as we can. And, you know, we were close with a few ones. So, you know, some pet stores looked at it and said, like, I don't know if there are enough people, I don't know if there are enough pet owners on the island to make it work. Maybe it works with grooming and how much space we need for grooming to do this versus that. And it'll happen one day.
If you move the deli into a smaller space, I agree with Vicky, they had way too much space and they're selling stuff.
The deli, the new
No,
stuff.
not the island, sorry, the island is.
The truth is, we have plenty. We don't need the newsstand to move to
That
bring
would
a
be
pet
a good
store.
space. That
We
would
have
probably
spaces
be a
right.
good space for a pet group.
If somebody's looking at our space now, they could look at the Boy Scout space, which is small. They could look at 503 and 521, which are much bigger. They could look at 548, which has a big mezzanine. So we have plenty of diversity of spaces. We don't need anybody to move to. 548 would also be good for a food. 548 would also.
Is that the
Sealed
bakery?
No, that's the bakery. 548 would be a good food use because you can ventilate that space for a restaurant, as opposed to 503, which would be a fantastic way to welcome people to Main Street. It would be a great food use, but River Cross wouldn't allow us to ventilate the space.
What about the hardware store as
We are open for business. If a pet store is interested, we can offer them 5 or 6 spaces today, and that's the problem. Is not the different spaces. The problem is just getting somebody who believes who's confident they can make money running a pet store on Roosevelt Island, and then has the resources to open up a store. A lot of the people we talk to are people who have day jobs, and they are oral hygienists or taxi drivers or baseball players, and they also want to open up a store. And so you have to have resources and confidence in a business plan. And a lot of times people make it just to the point of like crossing the finish line, and then they don't.
I'm Janet Paul, and we have been in email correspondence, although you haven't replied as often as I would like, regarding signage on Roosevelt Island. Every day we see tourists get off and reboard the train because there's nothing at the Trent Plaza that says you can get an ice cream, you can get a cup of coffee, you can go to Gallery Riga, you can do any number of things on Roosevelt Island.
Did you hear what I said?
Yes, I did. I'm thrilled, but my question to you is, what has been the holdup, and what is it going to look like? And why is there anything even temporarily there? I mean, FDR Memorial Park put up very large brochure posters that direct people to walk to the FDR Memorial, and they've been up for quite a few months. You've been running the retail stores for several years, and
go to Ellen.
You're right, and so guilty as charged. I wish we had a super duper budget for Eleanor's Pier for our 1 3-month designation to have signage everywhere, but we had a limited budget to do 3 months. And as for our signage, part of your question is directed at me, and part of it is directed at REOC, because I'm not REOC, and my job isn't signage for the whole island. I want to look out for the retail tenants. And the truth is, it's been a long journey that started with the following. First, we had the idea to do digital signage. Then we decided, let's wait until the city's RFP process, because New York City put out an RFP, or was planning to put out an RFP, to pick a digital sign company to manage and maintain and create digital signage all over the city. And Jonathan Colton was incredibly helpful in guiding us. And we realized, what happens if you have an outdoor digital sign and you press it and it doesn't work? Which happens all the time. Whenever I try an outdoor digital sign that's supposed to interact, it never works. And so what if the company's in Canada and we're in Roosevelt Island, we have 3, we should just piggyback whoever's doing it citywide. And so that RFP, I don't know if it never happened or it took forever. I still don't know if it's been assigned. So at some point we decided the city's taking too long. We don't like the idea of digital signage. So let's just do it ourselves and let's just keep it simple and we'll have a wayfinding system. And we brought to REOC, I would say, 3 or 4 months ago, 4 or 5 different ideas, and we sort of narrowed it on one. And now we're back to sort of make a more concrete proposal.
Okay, but here's a simple solution, which is, what about the screen on the tram? REOC rents that space, and I know that Coach Scott advertised that.
Right. So that's something for individual retailers to do.
Yeah.
That's not, I'm not going to. I don't think it's that helpful to advertise shops on Main. It's better for it to be a specific store. We actually are interested in the tram advertising for Eleanor's Pier now that we are in the service business.
All right, one more question, which is, what about a fish store? I understand before I came here in 2008.
There was a fish store. We have not been solicited by a fish store, and I'd be open to it. I think it's the times I was in the fish store, it wasn't exactly a fish store. It wasn't a successful fish store, and I don't know if the demographics of the size of our island can support that type of niche retail. It's not as though we're anti-fish store, it's just that nobody has come to us to lease it. Judy Birdie, followed by Cynthia. Oh, sorry.
I came in late, but I'm happy to say our new brochure will finally be finished. We're finished with the art. I'll have a text tomorrow, we'll have it. And we're planning on giving out at least 20,000 of them as long as our money holds out.
Did you talk
And
to
we're
her?
hear anything. We're giving out new brochures for visitors at the kiosk at the visitor center. And they're going to be ready finally next week. And then we're also going to do rat cards, which is just a card, just basic information front and back. And you see it all over the city now. Museums and galleries come out of wood to print brochures anymore, just to give out. So this is a 2-sided cardstock thing. We're going to do that. We get 300 to 400 visitors. We can easily get 400 visitors a day on the weekend in the kiosk. But it is very hard to attract those people that walk off the tram. No matter what we have, our sign is big, we have an open sign. You just only can grab a certain number of people. And it's sort of like follow the Pied Piper. If one person from a tram cabin empties 20 to come into the kiosk at the same time, and if the Pied Piper doesn't come in, no one comes in. It's a mystical thing about visiting Roosevelt Island.
You got to have a shell at the tram saying,
I need a
oh yeah, I heard the Roosevelt Island Historic Society is really good.
I know.